Hello students, how are you all doing? I hope you're all doing fine and welcome to Glecta. This is your biology session where we're starting with a new chapter, which is organization and digestive system. In this chapter, we're going to start and talk about how tissues and cells make up an entire organ and how these organs coordinate together and work in a system which is digestive system, in which we eat and digest whatever we've taken in and how that is absorbed in the body along with its assimilation. So let's get started. In this entire lecture, we're going to talk about, the entire chapter will cover out these topics, which is how specialized cells become organized into tissues. Then we're going to talk about how special different tissues work together to form an organ, the position of main organs in the digestive system, the basic structure of carbohydrates, proteins and lipids so that we can understand the chemistry of the food, then how the digestive system works, making digestion efficient, what is a catalyst, how catalysts work as a biological catalyst, which is enzymes working as biological catalyst, and what is the metabolism of body that is involved. At last, we're going to talk about the factors that may affect the enzyme action, which is how it can differ in different conditions affecting the digestion of different kind of food materials. So let's get started with the first thing, which is tissues and organs. Now what happens is, you already know about what a cell is. We've talked about how there are different kinds of cell. For example, we talked about eukaryotic cells, so did we about prokaryotic. Then in eukaryotic, we talked about animal, and then we talked about plant. So you know about all the kind of cells that you guys have to understand about. Now what happens when a lot of cells work together, performing the same exact function, coming from the same exact origin, which means they're coming from the same stem cell and they're also performing the same function. What will happen to cells like that? In those conditions, these cells will form a structure which is known as tissue. So a tissue is a group of cells with the similar structure and function that will be working together for a simple kind of function. For example, muscles. Muscles are tissues. They are muscle cells that work together to contract and relax different kind of parts of the body, and all together they are known as muscle tissues. Similarly, what will happen if a lot of tissues working on the same kind of system work together in an organization? What happens is, for example, if you talk about, there may be some, skin cells, then there might be some glandular cells, there might be some layers of different kind of mucus. What if we, take these different kind of tissues, clump them together and try and form a structure out of it? So when you clump different kinds of tissues together, you're going to form the organ. This organ is going to have different kinds of tissues, but all these kinds of tissues will be working together to actually work out the same thing. For example, in this, you see a stomach. Stomach may have a lot of different kind of tissues, but all the tissues all together in this organ are actually working in the digestive system. The main focus, the main function of these tissues are always going to be to digest the food. Now, if you take a lot of organs, make a system out of that, then it is known as organ system. For example, as the name of the chapter says, digestive system. After this, what happens when a lot of digestive systems and different kind of systems are put together in one body? That forms an organism. For example, in this here you see a rat. So a rat has a digestive system in which there's a stomach. In stomach there are different kinds of tissues working together, and in those tissues there are cells. So organs, again coming to the definitions of organ, Organs are a collection of tissues. Each organ contains several tissues all working together to perform one specific function, for example, the stomach. Now coming to an example in which you see three different kinds of tissues, and all these tissues are there in the same system, but these tissues are working for the different kind of functions, and but when they're clumped up together they form one system. For example, look at this here. This is epithelial layer. We've talked about how the outermost layer of every organism is always going to be called as epithelium. So this is epithelial tissues. Then you see here these are fats. Then you see here and this blue one. Then you also see this pink one. So this yellow one is fats. So keeping aside the fats, because fats are not tissues, look at these blue one and the hair one. These both are your glands. So these are glandular tissues. On the other hand, the pink one is the muscular tissues. So the glandular tissues contain the secretory cells that can produce and release substances such as enzymes and hormones. There are muscular tissues that can contract and bring about movement, and then there's epithelial tissues covering the outside of the body as well as the internal organs. So these are different kinds of tissues. They're all present at different points of body, and all these together are working from the same kind of function. For example, if this organization is in the skin, we have hair cells, we have sweat glands, then we have muscles, and we have also epithelial layer. So this will be for protective reasons. At the same time, if this organization is present in the stomach, stomach has acid, so it's supposed to have a gland. Stomach also has muscular tissues around it, and it also has an epithelial layer which is covering outside of the stomach. So all three layers are present, but in stomach these three layers together are working for the process of digestion. So similarly, what point are these three layers present are going to make a difference because of the kind of function that organ has ought to perform. Now look at these. First one are your cardiac muscles. These are your glandular muscles. You see pouches here. These pouches are where they're going to store their secretions, their hormones, maybe sweat sometimes, may even store some oil. On the other hand, this one is your epithelial tissues. So your muscles, muscular tissues, glandular tissues, and epithelial tissues. When you zoom in into your epithelial tissues or glandular tissues, you're going to see in glandular there are openings like this. In epithelial also there are some openings, but they are different from glandular tissues. How? There are difference in the pores. For example, your face has a lot of pores. That's visible by the naked eye. So there might be pores or there might be glands. Now coming to the stomach, because that's what this chapter is going to talk about majorly, so you guys ought to understand the organization in the stomach. In the stomach there are muscular tissues to churn the food and digestive juices in the stomach together. What they're saying is, if this is the container, that is your stomach, the food and the digestive juices are here, muscular tissues contract and relax to churn it, to mix that mixture, that two substances properly together so that the digestion can start. Moving to the glandular tissues, they are to produce digestive juices that break down the food, for example HCl and pepsin. We're going to talk about all the secretions that happen in the body in the further parts of the chapter, but here you need to understand that digestive juices are always stored in some kind of gland, and that gland is made up of glandular tissues. Then there is also epithelial tissues which cover the inside and the outside of the organ. Every organ, if this is the wall of the stomach, the inside is also epithelial, the outside is also epithelial. So outside, inside, inside, outside, all this is covered with epithelium. For example, your hand, here is also epithelium, so is here. Similarly, in your systems of organs, the same thing works out, the same thing follows, that both inside and the outside outermost layer is going to be epithelium. So if you guys look at the diagram, there are epithelial tissues, there are connective tissues for veins that are going to be around it, then there are muscular tissues, and then there's nervous tissues. Why are nervous tissues present around the stomach? Why do you need nervous system or brain cells working around in your stomach? That is so that you can understand the feeling of hunger. We understand the feeling of hunger because there are nerve tissues that are around there. So there is a message sent to the brain that okay, the stomach is empty, has been empty for a long time, then it needs some amount of food so that it can start working. Pancreas is an organ that has two important functions. In the GIF, you see how it looks like under the microscope. Now, pancreas is something that is present in the digestive system but is not a part of it, which means it's almost like an accessory gland in the digestive system. And if you talk about the digestive system, it is one route from the mouth to the anus, and there's only one vein. It's like a one tube system. In that tube system, there are two things that are working individually, not being a part of that tube, but still helping in the process. These two things are, the first is liver and the second is pancreas. So pancreas make hormones to control the blood sugar. We've talked about this in the last chapter when we were talking about the production of insulin, as well as some enzymes that digest food. So that is how it helps in the process of digestion. It contains two very different type of tissues which produce these different secretions. What they're trying to say is insulin is one secretion, enzymes or digestive enzymes are the other. The tissues that are going to help in this are going to be different, which means if this is from tissue A, enzymes are going to be secreted from tissue B. So like that. They're never going to be secreted from the same tissue, but because tissues are supposed to perform the same function. So if A tissue has a function of producing insulin, B tissue is going to have a function of producing enzymes. Now talking about organ system. Organ system are a group of organs that work together to perform a specific function. For example, here you see almost all the organs that are present except the ones that are present behind it. For example, behind your intestinal area there are kidneys. So there's lungs, in this there's heart, there's diaphragm, stomach, there's liver, there's large intestine, there's small intestine, and at last there's rectum. So almost all the organs are present except there's no food pipe that you can see, there is no pancreas that you see, there are no kidneys or your reproductive system. But these are a lot of organs working together. All these organs working together for an organism is actually the system which is known as organ system. In a way, which one organ functions often depends on the other organ of the system. For example, you see food or you smell food, that's going to produce saliva in the mouth. So let me write it. If you see food or you smell it, two different organs are involved in both these. First is eye and the second is nose. You see them, then in your mouth there is saliva. Saliva is in the mouth. Then your stomach starts producing acid, which is in the stomach. Or sometimes even your stomach makes some kind of noise. So that's because of stomach. So all these things are interconnected. Similarly, there are lots of organ systems that are one way or the other dependent on each other. For example, liver you see here is going to produce urea, and this urea will actually be removed from the body with the help of the other organ which is known as kidney. Same thing, lungs are going to help you for gaseous exchange, but these gaseous exchange, after oxygen entering the body, it is used by the muscles. So one thing is always interconnected with the other, and organ systems are going to work together to form an organism. Coming to the human digestive system, in the GIF you can see what actually happens, and we're going to talk about each one of these steps in detail. So digestive systems facilitate the process of digestion. Digestive system is one of the major organ systems in the body. Why would we call that? Because there are lots of organs involved, coming from mouth to esophagus to stomach. Then there is your small intestine, large intestine, and then ending to the rectum. Other than that, I told you that there are two different organs, which is pancreas and liver, involved in the same process while not being a part of the system. So this is one of the major ones because it involves a lots of organs, and at the same time it performs a very crucial process, which is digestion of food, so that we can have that energy that we need to perform different kind of processes. The length is 6 to 9 meter, that is 9 million times or 6 order of magnitude longer than the average human cell. I hope you guys remember what is order of magnitude now. So this is what is happening, and 9 million times being bigger than a human cell, it's a lot. And if I say the length, I mean from the mouth. So length is from the mouth to the anus. So from the mouth to the anus, there's just one tube which is at least 6 to maximum of 9 meter in length. The food that is ingested is made up of large insoluble molecules. For example, you eat bread. It's not possible for the body to take in bread as it is. The body has to break that bread particles down so that whatever is nutritive out of it can be absorbed in the body. These molecules are too large for the absorption, which is obvious. It's not like you eat the bread and your body absorbs the bread. If nothing, it is going to be a piece this big. Your body cannot possibly have this big of a pore to absorb the entire particle of the bread. So it would have to break it down and then absorb it. Therefore, there is a need to break down these larger molecules into smaller ones, soluble molecules that are then absorbed by the body easily. So what they're saying is that whatever you take in would be broken down in your body. Now here there's a word which is known as ingested, or if you're talking about the action or the process, actually is ingestion. This is the word used for taking in of the food. Similarly, there's another word which is known as egested. This would be removal of waste from the body which has been produced by the process of digestion. The food particle that cannot be absorbed by the body. So E means out, in means in. So like that you guys can remember it. Now coming to that, it's a muscular tube. These people, the author is actually talking about the mouth till anus, the tube, or the digestive tract that squeezes the food through it. So the tube is going to be muscular, specifically your throat tube, which is also known as the esophagus. This one is going to be muscular so that it squeezes the food down to your stomach. It starts from mouth and ends at anus. There are different organs and glands that help in this breakdown of food. Now let's label all these parts so that you can remember it in an easier way. Then we can go back on to digestion and the different kind of secretions that happen in the body. So the first opening for the digestive system is the mouth. Then here the blue one that you see is going to be pharynx, then there's esophagus, then there is this which is known as stomach, then this one is known as the small intestine, then the green one which is known as large intestine, then the blue one that you see is the rectum, and the opening of the rectum is known as anus. This is the parts that are present in the tube, which is your digestive tract. Talking about the accessory parts, which is this one, which is liver, and there's the other one, this one, which is pancreas. So these are all the parts that are involved in the process of digestion. Moving to these diagrams, these are very, very important. I would rather that you learn it as they are, because then you're going to remember all the processes. So let's start with the parts again. The first part is mouth. Mouth has a lot of things. The one that's very, very important for you are tongue and teeth. Then there is pharynx. Below pharynx there is esophagus. Now before moving to the esophagus, there are different glands present in the stomach, or your mouth, sorry, which is salivary glands. There are 3 salivary glands, although you did not need to learn the name, but you need to know that there are 3 salivary glands that are there in the mouth. Moving down from the esophagus, you reach the stomach. In stomach, there are going to be a lot of secretions which we're going to talk about, but there is no different kind of gland present in the stomach. The walls of the stomach itself facilitates the process of release of all those secretions, so you do not need to learn the name of the gland. Moving to the liver, there is the part which is brown one, which is liver. Then you see this green colored sac like structure. This is known as gallbladder. Below stomach, exactly, if this is the stomach, behind it there's a gun like structure which is known as the pancreas, and pancreas is present behind the stomach. So there is pancreas. In pancreas you see there are linings here, a lot of linings. These are known as the pancreatic ducts. Now if you look at this properly, this are coming down here in the pancreas, meeting the pancreatic duct. These lining together are known as common bile duct. We're going to talk about what bile is, but this is the name of the duct. Then when it enters the small intestine, in small intestine there are 3 parts. The first part is known as the duodenum, which is this part, the C part. Leaving the stomach, entering the small intestine, so it's a C part. If you look in the back diagram, you can see it properly here, here and here. So there's a C-shaped curve which is known as duodenum. Then there is jejunum, which is the upper part here, and ileum, which is like below this area. So the upper part, the uppermost part, which is C-shaped, is this duodenum, then there's jejunum, and then there's ileum. After small intestine, the food is going to, or the digested food is, whatever particles are left are going to enter the large intestine. Before entering the large intestine, there's a small part which is known as appendix. Although appendix is not anymore used in human body because we usually eat cooked food, appendix was used for the breakdown of cellulose. I hope you guys remember that cellulose is the material that makes up the plant cell wall. So when there were, times when people used to live in the forest, nomads used to eat leaves. So those leaves were never cooked, so they had to have some structure which was going to dissolve the cellulose in the cell walls. So that's there, and then there's the green part which is known as the large intestine. In large intestine, there are different parts you do not need to learn. At last part there is a rectum and the opening is the anus. So this is what is happening in your digestive system. Coming to what is exactly happening as in what is the steps. The first step is going to be ingestion of food. After ingestion of food, you're going to have to chew it. After chewing, you're going to swallow it. after swallowing in the esophagus, there's going to be a peristaltic movement, a movement like this, which is pretty much why if you look at this, the wall of the, for example, you swallowed the food, so food is somewhere here. The upper part is going to close and it's going to squeeze the food down. So that process is known as peristalsis. Then it's going to enter the stomach. There's going to be churning because of the muscular tissues around the stomach. Then it's going to enter the small intestine. In small intestine, there's going to be chemical digestion. Although chemical digestion starts from the mouth, the major part of it starts from the stomach and the small intestine. So that's going to happen. Then after all this, there's going to be a process which is known as absorption. What's the point of digestion when there's no absorption? Even if you digest the food and your body is unable to absorb it, there's no point of eating at all. So absorption is going to happen, and after that there's going to be defecation or removal of waste material from the anus. Now there are two words that you see here. There's one which I've already circled, which is chemical digestion, and the other one is the mechanical digestion. So mechanical digestion and chemical. Mechanical always means the physical part. So physical part happens in two parts, mouth and stomach. Stomach because of the muscles, mouth because of the teeth and the tongue. So that's there. And then there is chemical, which starts from the mouth, although and it is followed till the small intestine. So all that is about digestion. I hope you've understood the basis of this chapter, because in the next section we're going to talk about further topics in this chapter. But I would like to wrap this part here, because you guys need to revise this and you guys need to learn this all before we start with the next section. So that's all for this lecture. I'll see you in the next lecture talking about a new topic. Till then, bye bye, take care.